Did you know 21% of all children have been exposed to cyberbullying, according to a recent study from security.org? Today, bullying isn't just limited to classroom, but follows children and teenagers everywhere they go due to smartphones and the way that we are constantly online. My name is Jonas Strandell. This is The Clean Feed, a podcast about how we can make the internet a safer place. I am super excited about today's guest. She is a scientist who has dedicated much time to evaluating what to think about when your children get their first smartphone and, not least, what to avoid. Welcome, Frida Lygnegård.
Thank you.
So can you make a quick introduction about yourself? Tell us a little bit about what you do and your background.
Yes, thank you, Jonas. Very happy to be here. I work as a researcher at Jönköping University in Sweden. I'm an occupational therapist by training, and I have a master's in public health and a PhD in disability research. And my main areas of interest are children's participation in society, and most of all, children's rights according to the Convention on the Rights of the Child that is now a law actually in Sweden.
Right. Yeah. And just for background and for everyone to what do you consider when you say children? What do you like? Everyone up to 18, or is that different from country to country?
That's a really good question. Yes, I would say my definition is actually according to the UNCRC, the convention, where children are children until the age of 18, actually. So that's a good clarification.
Yeah. All right. That's really, really good to hear. And we were talking previously to starting recording a little bit about our own children and the fears that you might have. And I oftentimes think about the dangers that we grew up with, like don't talk to strangers, don't follow strangers home, or get into cars or anything. But we very rarely talk about the dangers of the internet and what can happen. And it's very convenient to get a smartphone because you want to keep track on where your kids are and want to be able to reach them at all times. But there are some dangers lurking in the backgrounds, right?
Yes, and these dangers are, well, in a way, they are very different, as you say, Jonas. And today the dangers are more invisible, perhaps. Maybe we as parents, of course, are more worried. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and of course, these were not things that we needed to consider. And as a parent also today, I totally agree with you. There are new and different forms of dangers, but our children are also more used to the technology of today, in a way.
Yeah. Also, but maybe not also aware of like the actual dangers and might not be able to tell like what is an actual danger and like can I be a good critic of like what is an actual danger? We talk a lot about catfishing and impersonating someone that might not actually be, because you don't know who's on the other side, that if you're playing game with someone or something like that, right?
Exactly, and I usually say that the internet was really not made for children, but still it has become such an important part of millions of children all over the world. And children today, they spend time online, they rely on systems and platforms that really has a direct or indirect effect on their everyday life.
Yeah. No, I think one of the things that I really want to talk about is cyberbullying, and I find it kind of funny that we call it cyberbullying, because to me it's bullying no matter where it happens, whether that be on your smartphone or in real life in school or something. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about like, but what is the difference between cyberbullying and if we can use that phrase, normal bullying or traditional bullying, if you will, and talk a little bit about the effects on the victim for that.
Definitely, and there are different definitions of cyberbullying, of course. But one is that, for example, that you, in terms of cyberbullying, that you are exposed through electronic devices, obviously, and there's a rough treatment in place repeatedly against a person or a child in this particular case, and this child has no way of defending themselves. The children can't defend themselves, and the difference is, of course, also that, I mean, you usually, when you speak about cyberbullying, it's in terms of relation to traditional bullying. The cyberbullying is much more, or not much more, but it's very difficult to to stop. And it also makes something with the children because it's more anonymous. You don't have to take the direct consequences. You can't, or you don't care about seeing the body language if someone starts to cry or get worried, the facial expressions, etc. So that's kind of the big difference, I would say, that the responsibility is not there at all in a way.
Right. Yeah. And how, because I imagine that when I went to school, and I do sound like the grumpy old man, like throwing fists at the cloud. But it's when I went to school, if you were bullied or if you were afraid of someone, you might be harassed at school. But the minute you left the school property and you came home, like that was a safe zone. But the difference now is that the bullies follow you home, right? So, yeah.
Exactly, and that's incredibly really good point to raise here, because today with the technology that we have now, you also invite strangers into your everyday life, into your sofas, into the kids' most safe place, as you say, Jonas, and that's really, really the big difference. If you play the VR, for example, you enter different lobbies, and all of a sudden you are there with people from all over the world, or if you are on Discord or any chat forum, whatever. So you're not safe in that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you are safe because you are in your home. So for the victim, it can be, oh no, sorry, for the perpetrator, it's even more easy.
Yeah. So would you say that I would just assume that the anxiety levels, if you want to call it that, I'm thinking about like the sort of the effects on the victim is that I would feel worried or like feel anxious when I was in school because there were bigger children or someone that I was scared of or a bully or something. But you can't just really rid yourself of that now, just get on your bike and go home. So I was just wanted to talk to you a little bit about like sort of the long-term effects, if you will, or like how does this manifest itself for the victim? I was just interested to hear your view on that.
Mm. And of course, this is very individual, but on a group level, you can say that, for example, social anxiety, for some kids, you also see decreased self esteem. Low school attendance could be one thing. Depression for some, there could be really vast
Right.
consequences
Yeah. Right.
for children that you also bring with you in the future as an adult, and that's no difference in terms of traditional bullying, because those consequences you live with forever as well.
Right. 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 And we talked previously before we started recording a little bit like the if you can call it a responsibility, but I would assume like these platforms have some sort of responsibility in making sure that not everyone can get on these platforms. But looking at different platforms, if you talk about VR or something like, it might require you to have like a Facebook account or creating an account. And a lot of parents will create this for their children and sort of circumvene that account creating process. But would you say the responsibility lie equally on like the platforms as well as in the parents talking about the dangers that might occur on these platforms?
Mm. That's a really big question as well. And I would say that the platforms, if we start with them, there's a huge responsibility in terms of also what kind of content they would allow, and how the I'm not into the security systems here, but I also discussed this with my son, and he also sometimes says that it's not the game itself, it's the behaviors that we as users
Right. Right.
create.
Yeah.
And that's always the thing, right? But the platforms or the tech, how do you say, those who create these
Yeah. Yeah.
platforms, they of course they need to have processes in place. But also what I hear from children when I speak to children and when I read about research, it's not only about having systems in place to report bad behavior. There
Hmm.
also needs to be a system in place that if you are the reporter, maybe, for example, you see that someone are using really bad language, and then there is quite easy to report that person. But then sometimes you as yourself get banned from the game because you use the words when you explain
Oh
that someone
yeah.
is using the F words or whatever. And then
Right.
you
Right.
then you actually end up being banned as well because you use the words just to report someone else. So there's a lot of things that the systems needs to be, it needs to be designed to protect the reporter as well.
Yeah, and I would just imagine that the reporting. I mean, it is a big step reporting someone. You can be anonymous and say, "Hey, I'm going to report you," but it's also it is quite cumbersome in like, oh, then I need to fill out this form, and I can't remember the username that was using this language, so it's kind of cumbersome to sort of go all the way and do this
Yeah.
reporting, right?
Exactly, for some, but I think also there are for example, in gaming, there is kind of easy to report someone now, but maybe it's they need to work a little bit with to protect the reporter. And also, if you see in the study I made that we will perhaps speak about soon regarding how to talk with children online, I also saw that this was really uh, children need to know not only that they are going to tell an adult, but also what will happen to the if you tell someone what will happen with the victim. How can you be the one that reports without being bullied yourself? So there are
Yeah,
many things.
yeah. That's a really good segue into what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that research and the reporting that you do on like, okay, so how do we talk to children about like what kind of measures, like what kind of steps do you take, like how can you make sure that my kids are safe enough to at least come to talk to me about when something happens?
Mm.
Talk to me a little bit about that
Yeah.
research that you're doing.
Yeah, and I want to start with just saying that there was a report from the Swedish anti-bullying organization Friends from 2022, and also ECPAT from 22, I think, as well. There is one major finding from that one, and that is that it's uh, there are so many children who has experienced harassments, but they don't tell their parents. So parents don't have a clue what's going on online. And I think this could also be one of the reasons that the Swedish company Telia, together with friends from the beginning, and now they have developed this digital tool that is supposed. It's called the mobile driving license in English, and it's supposed to be like a dialogue starter for for children and their parents in
Right.
terms of your question, Jonas.
Yeah.
And the idea is to just start. How can you speak with your child about internet when you get your first phone? It's the revised version now is based on the research that I did, where I interviewed children and parents about this mobile driving license, and it's now revised to 8 to 11 years kids
Right.
in that
So
span.
when you talk to me a little bit about this driver's license,
Mm,
or that we
mm.
call it, it's actually in Swedish called mobilkörkortet, which doesn't mean anything to foreign listeners, but like it's actually like a license, if you will.
Yeah, kind of. It's an interactive platform. It's 20 quiz questions on how to behave online, different security aspects. It's a knowledge part, and you also get some advice as an adult. And there are some interactive parts. And then when you have finished this quiz, you also can have a star that you can download to your phone, and it's for free if you have an internet um, connection, of course. But the idea is really to just start talking with your kids about online security, how to behave online, but also the good things that comes with internet. It's not only bad things, right?
Yeah, no, exactly, and I think more than anything, for advice for parents, but not only like parents, but adults in general, it's like keep an ear on what's going on in your kids' room when they're playing and things like that, because the the tonality of conversation that happens is like you can pick up a lot of things just by listening to how do my kid talk to other kids online. Um,
Exactly. And the thing is also that the idea that you don't really, one of the major things from this research, but that I spoke about with the Friends report now, is if you don't know as a parent, some kids actually say that they don't even have an adult that they trust to even tell that this, if you have been abused online or, um, well, some sort of harassments. And the dialogue, I think the dialogue between the kid, that's one of the preventive measures as well that you need as a parent to create this. And it's so, I'm a parent myself. I know how difficult it can be. For example, if you see your child watching shorts or TikTok clips or
yeah.
whatever, and there, Jonas, there are so many things online that you as an adult think, but this is so strange. But if you say that all the time to a kid, they will end up not wanting to tell you at all, right?
Right, right. But also, I can imagine there are multiple settings that you can set up for your kids and have parental guidance or supervision on what your children are doing on your phone. But I can also say that from experience that sometimes that is also a little bit cumbersome like their parents or an adult to be like, oh yeah, I need to go into settings and I can do this from my phone, but it's also it I don't want to limit too much to what they can do, because then I might go into an argument with my child about like, oh, I've actually limit your access to something that your friends are doing. And that's a really powerful force in everything. Like, what are my friends doing? Why can't my friends do this, but I can't? That's a really big thing.
Exactly. And that's usually what kids also use, when you want to navigate this or kind of more argue around this. And I think as a parent, I think it's very difficult if you only go with a hard punishment thing. I think just opening up for the dialogue, but also show as a parent that you are the good role model. If we want to talk about preventive measures, I think
Right.
we as adults, we need to show parents that we can also put away our phone sometimes. It's very easy to say to your children, well, you have too much screen time. But as adults, we also use the phones
Right.
quite a lot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about like the children's rights, and when we talk about children's rights, it's like a global goal, and everything that like children's convention and all that are agreeing to certain principles and goals that we set out. Talk to me a little bit about like children's rights online.
Really good. Thank you for addressing this, Jonas, because children's rights are no different from the real world, so to speak. And children's rights are human rights. And then you can ask, why do you need specific rights for children? That's the question I get sometimes. And the answer to that is also that kids are depending on us as adults. They are more vulnerable and more exposed. And of course, they need to have a safe context to grow up in. So these rights, I mean, for example, there are rights that regarding the Article 3 in the Convention that concerns the best interest of the child should always be taken into consideration. There's another article, Article 12, that states that all children have the right to express themselves, but then there is also a responsibility in this, of course. But we need to, as adults, actually listen to the kids, and they need to have the right to say things in a safe manner. We need to know how to involve children with disabilities, for example, if you have difficulty to understand a lot of information. And here I think, for example, the big companies, they have a huge responsibility in perhaps also asking for help from perhaps people like me, researchers. How can we, or people who work with kids with disabilities, how can we create instructions, forums that also have information that is more easy to understand and comprehend, for example. So there are many
Right.
things to consider.
No, I think that is a really, really good point. And I think it's easy to forget when you're an entrepreneur or you want to develop a game or anything online, like you're driven by a passion and you have an idea, and you sometimes forget that maybe your target audience is a little bit younger than you first thought they would be. And we don't want to scare people away from inventing or coming up with new ideas for games or platforms. But there's a point where you can actually reach out to someone like yourself and like have conversations around how can we do this in a good, sustainable way for kids that might just make this platform live on a little bit longer, because sustainability, as we talked about before, is also really, really important and an important part of what you're doing.
Exactly. And when I speak about my research, I also try to highlight exactly what you say now, because we're all trying to reach the global goals, the Agenda 2030. That's quite soon now. And the thing is that children's rights is it's a part of these little bit more soft things in society. Most people would say it's very important that you work with children and they should be safe and have a nice environment. Yes, but when it comes to hard facts, adults really need to shape up then. And in terms of creating a sustainable society, I can't do that alone as a researcher. I need people like you at Besedo, I need to work with different parts of society to
Right.
create a sustainable society for the future generation.
Yeah, yeah, and also I think it is an important part to remember that even though as a business, someone who is 15 or 16 today might not be your profitable customer, but eventually this person will grow up and have their own income and own money to spend. And if you do well by them at an early stage, it will also most likely mean that they trust you and they know that you're like a trusted source of information or a platform that has done good previously. So what you do now, you will reap the benefits of whatever it is that you do now much later as well.
Exactly, and many children say that. For example, in the Friends report from 22 as well, there are voices from children saying that I just wanted that someone actually maybe not just fixed my problems, but just took some time to listen, and not just listen, but really listen. Maybe you don't, as an adult, have to come with solutions all the time. Kids just need to know that you are there. Put your phone aside and then just try to give them a minute, an honest minute to be there for them.
Yeah, right. And also as a parent and an adult, like victim blaming, no one has ever benefited at all from,
No,
from victim blaming. So make sure, like I think I speak for both of us when I say that if your kid has the confidence to share these information with you, that they are feeling insecure or they're being bullied or they somehow feel insecure in an online environment, take that as a big plus and a slap on the back that you've done a great job, and nurture that confidence that your kid has with you, and talk about them, because grown up gets they suffer from scams or frauds as well. So it's not just kids that has bad experiences on platforms.
exactly. And if I can also relate a little bit to what you say, also to kids' place in society, because now I work from Sweden. I live in Sweden, and in Sweden, I want to think that we educate our kids quite well in the convention and children's rights. But I know that this pod has an international audience, for example, and I know that in many other countries, in some countries, children are not taught about their own rights, and that it might be a society or a culture where children, they really don't have a profound place in society, and maybe you just view children as, well, when they grow up then we can speak to them. But you can really, I just want to emphasize that, please talk to children, invite them in a safe way, and do it with respect, and be honest with what you can do and what you can't do, because kids can often understand that you can't solve everything.
Yeah, yeah, that's really good point. And I thought of something when you were talking now, that I mean, the screen, the iPhone or the phone or the tablet is something that is kind of private for a kid, that they bring to their room. So they have good times. So they're kind of ambivalent in that. They have both good times because they enjoy whatever it is happening. They can watch their movies or YouTube clips or play games. But also there is something lurking in the background that might not be positive. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, there's something that we often refer to as like, oh, what about screen time? Well, what does that do for mental health and
Mm.
sleep and all that? And I have small kids myself that you almost need to pry away like their phones away from them when it's time to go to sleep, when you're like, no, your brain needs to rest. So
Mm.
I wanted to talk to you just a little bit around like the importance of actually putting away your phone at night, and getting some phone free time, if you will.
Mm. And this is a challenge, isn't it, for, I think,
Yeah.
parents all over the world. And I think there's two things I want to address. The first one is actually the power that you have as an adult, and when you become a bit stressed as a parent, or you feel that you're out of control, and we don't have a stand, we don't stand a chance in a way when it comes to the digital solutions. There are new things almost every week in a way. or every day sometimes. And I think we just need to understand that and invite the kids to also explain to us, where are they now? What is important to them now? What's going on in the online world in a way? And then just understand that power is not to be raising your voice or be in control physically. Power is really when you can have a balance. It doesn't mean that your responsibility is less if you invite the child to actually explain to you. It just gives you more a confidence as a parent, I think.
Yeah.
That's the one thing. And the other thing is that I think the research that I have read about, I haven't done that research myself, but for example, Karolinska Institutet, there is one lady, Lisa Torell, I think her name was. They've done studies, and the thing is that it's not only about the screen time, the amount of time, it's also what you do, but also what you do when you are not at your phone.
Right. Yeah, and it's the dopamine and everything that,
Yes.
that comes with that. So yeah, I really enjoy this conversation, Frida, and I feel right now that we should probably schedule like a part 2 of this, where we talk a little bit more about statistics and like really hit home the things that comes with your research. And I think this has been fantastic. We're going to put a few links in the show notes to the Child Convention and the research that you mentioned earlier. Also, if you want to talk more to Frida about this, look her up on LinkedIn. It's a good place to start. Connect with Frida on LinkedIn, ask her some questions, invite her to conversations around your platform, around something that has to do with kids on your platform. If you're worried, if you have questions, you might just be starting, or you might have come far away in your process. It's never too late or never too soon to start talking about what you can do and what you should consider.
And children can really teach us something. Thank you for that, Jonas. It's been a pleasure to be here. And if you invite children and take a step back and listen to them, you will learn so many new exciting things as well. So there is hope, I would say, if we just invite children to our adult world a little bit more.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much for joining our podcast, Frida.
Thank you.